episode, I want to talk about policy for Africa. In 2001, I had the privilege of spending 6 months on a sabbatical in Montreal in Canada. And I wanted to live in North America for a period of my life, because at the time this was really at the height of the dot-com boom. And as a consultant, I wanted to understand the digital economy. What was very interesting is that while I was in Canada, I came across a shop which was obviously run by the government. And this shop was full of the individual laws and policies of the government, where a normal citizen could just go in and buy them. And it was in an arcade, it was in a, what we would call a mall, it was like in a normal shopping street. And so it was very accessible to the public. And I really thought that that was a really great idea. In Africa, I think there are very few people who actually engage with the policies that are being developed by our parliaments. In fact, we have major gaps in policies in most countries across Africa. And this is making it practically impossible to effectively invest in Africa without being forced to know a person of influence who can enable an investment. This may sound very strange and very complex, but it isn't really that complex. It basically just means that in the absence of policies that guide the decision of a government, it's up to individuals to make a decision if an opportunity is brought to the government. And this is really, I believe, at the heart of the fact that so many people, so many political leaders across Africa become corruptible, because there's a very attractive opportunity brought in from the outside that wants to create an economic opportunity for that country, of course, or for that particular business. But at the same time, it is also something that would benefit the country. However, in the absence of an enabling policy framework, now it becomes impossible to enable that investment unless the big boss gives his nod to it. Now, who's the big boss? The big boss is whoever has the greatest amount of influence in that particular area. And sometimes it is a local chief, if you follow the traditional African structure, where there are people that are responsible for a piece of land. But more often than not, the first line of contact is somebody in government. And this somebody in government is somebody that needs to know people who will be willing to enable that person to make a decision about something. In the end, that person becomes corrupted because the company is paying them in order to wheel and deal, in the workings of government until the decision to give a yes and a go-ahead to this investment outside of the democratic parliamentary framework, which actually is the place where any kind of opportunity that should be benefiting the whole country should be presented to. And policy should start at legislature level, at parliamentary level. I often am just amazed at how God has led me through my life, because never in my dreams had I considered working, number one, for government, number two, for any legislature or provincial parliament. In South Africa, we call our provincial parliaments the legislatures. And suddenly in 1995, I found myself working at the Gauteng Provincial Parliament, at the newly established Gauteng Provincial Legislature. What an eye-opening experience that was. I didn't stay very long. I was there for about 2 years. But during those 2 years, I had exposure to so much knowledge and understanding of how laws are made, how the law-making process works, how laws can be influenced. And laws in a country are very often policies it really is about saying that if you have a policy as a country or as a political party, then this is what you choose to do. And you can enforce it by creating a law that makes it legal and says you must do it. It's very bad to create any law that is not enforceable. If we are looking at the policy environment in Africa, we need to review what's going on. In South Africa, we have a very unusual situation. A number of things in South Africa are unusual compared to the rest of Africa. And one of them is that we have a highly complex policy environment. This includes a highly complex tax environment. These are very onerous. I don't like the word onerous. It sounds terribly pretentious, but it describes very well what I want to say. So it's just difficult, but with a dark cloud over it. That's onerous. It's a very difficult business environment for a small business or a medium-sized business to be able to meet all the policies that our government has instituted in order to fulfill the vision of the leading political party, and in order to try and drive and change behavior of people in this country. But ultimately what it means is that there are so many businesses who fail as a result of administrative overload. I can write books about it, and in fact I'm planning to. So it's really incredible how complex our policy environment has become in South Africa. And also, I'm really, with great apologies to our parliament, but how badly written so many of those laws are. So badly written that you can see the symptom of that in the proliferation of huge law firms, legal firms, in a place like the economic heartland of South Africa, which is Sandton. Why do we need so many lawyers? Why is there an opportunity for so many lawyers? Because the laws are written in such a way that they can be interpreted in so many different ways. And so it really creates a terribly confusing environment. Equally, the tax laws are too complex. They are so complex that you spend a lot of money on sorting out just the framework for your business to start working in. And you haven't even started selling your first ice cream. So really, South Africa is like on the other scale of the whole policy game, where in other countries in Africa, the lack of enabling policies is the greater challenge. On top of that, South Africa still has a lack of enabling policies. This is why in 2001, while I was in Canada, I already had started something that I called Policy for Africa. At the time, I was building a software system that was going to trawl the internet. This was before Google. It was going to search the internet for anything that has to do with policy in Africa. And then it created a directory of all the different legislatures and parliaments across Africa, and it highlighted the different laws and collected the different laws of those countries automatically from any newspaper article or any mention of any policy that was happening in the internet. My intention at the time was to offer this as a service to large companies who wanted to keep an eye on the policy environment in Africa and who had very particular interests. At the time, this was really the beginning of the major rollout of the telecommunications companies, and obviously I was hoping to be able to convince one of them to become a client. In the end, my life turned out completely different, and I never pursued that option, and I parked that idea knowing that one day I'm going to pick it up again. That time is not yet here. But I'm telling you about it because I'm planning to start doing this, because I do believe that this is something that Africa needs. And fortunately, I'm very happy to see that there are some some companies in South Africa that have picked this up, at least in South Africa, and there are some efforts by other people to try and do something like this in Africa. So maybe I don't have to do that part of the story. However, the part where I don't see anybody really working on is the engaging in the policy-making process and the proactive influencing of the policy-making process for good. I do see here and there influencing policy-making processes where there's a particular company, there's a particular self-interest. That I do see. But I don't see anything that is actually really focusing on the greater good. Although there are some non-profit organizations that are trying to do their best in this field. But this is a huge opportunity all across Africa to become economically active around the design, the research and the development of excellent policies for our continent. I chose the name Policy for Africa because I believe in an Africa-wide approach. I hate reinventing the wheel. So if there's one good policy developed in a particular country, with a bit of adjustment, that policy may very well apply to other countries across Africa, thereby saving huge amounts of resources. We need to work together across Africa to create excellent policies. We need to create excellent policies from Cairo all the way down to the Cape. I get very irritated when I see maps that sort of cut off North Africa, and talk about sub-Saharan Africa, as if there's a divide. There's no divide. We are African. Algeria, you and I are African. We are African. We need to stand together. We need to find ways of loving each other. We need to find ways of respecting each other. We need to find ways of working together. We need to make sure none of our children are abused. We need to work together that we don't abuse one another. We need to work together. And policy, this is really where, from a democratic point of view, the greatest opportunity for influencing the future of this continent lies. I said in a previous episode that I personally believe that the party-based political democracy system has run its course. I believe that it is not serving us very well because ultimately it becomes about a personality cult. It's about who's the person we want to lead us. Because the policies are problematic, because one political party may have policies that you agree with, and another political party may have policies that you agree with, but both may have policies that you do not agree with. And so it becomes very difficult, whom do you vote for? I find myself in that position for many years already, that come election, I have no idea whom to vote for, because there are very particular things I don't agree with all of the parties. It becomes very complex. And so in a way, we are disenfranchised as voters, as the electorate, even before we go to the polls, because of the party-based political democracy system. I really believe that it's time for an issues-based voting system and for a completely different way of growing our leaders from the bottom up. And this is something that I will be working on in a couple of years' time. At this point in time, I want to focus on where the immediate need is, and that is on developing the skills of our youth and on creating opportunities for basic businesses at community level, and to just address the unnecessary, completely unnecessary poverty that we are experiencing in this continent. When it comes to Policy for Africa, as an instrument for enabling youth to transform this continent, this is what I am planning to set up. And if you are a young person in Africa who has studied law or who is interested in influencing the policy environment, please subscribe to this channel so that you can watch this space, because I am planning to start setting up a policy monitoring network all across Africa as one of the opportunities for our leadership and entrepreneurship students to get practical experience. This will probably only be in a year, definitely only be in a year's time, because I'm expecting that the students will first complete the first year, level 1 of the Leadership and Entrepreneurship program. If you're somebody who's interested in the policy environment across Africa, please subscribe to this channel so that you can know the information to register for the Leadership and Entrepreneurship program, so that you may register for that program and you may complete it over the next year, and that in the year after you can be one of the people in your country that could be monitoring policy and could be having an opportunity to work in the field of policy development. And really at the moment it's more around policy monitoring in your own country. So this is something for anyone that feels that God has laid on their heart that they need to make a difference in their country at a parliamentary level, starting as a journalist. Because really the best way to get access to a parliament or to a legislature is under the auspices of journalism. And Policy for Africa will be a new service that is going to communicate news about policy processes all across Africa. And this is something that I can set up within a year's time. It's one of the businesses that are going to be set up through the franchise-based system. And it is also the type of system that can be a social franchise. I'm not planning for this one to become a business franchise, because policy is a very sensitive matter and it needs to have very strong guidance from a central point of view in terms of the values and the values-based system that one is trying to underpin it with. So this is a baby that I'm going to keep very close to my heart, because I believe that for as many years as God still leaves me here on earth, I will need to look after that particular baby. Of course, not exclusively. I will have excellent people working with me on this. However, the idea is really that we have a network of students that are participating in the Level 2 Leadership and Entrepreneurship program, who will be based at the parliaments and at the provincial or state legislatures all across Africa as journalists, and they will be capturing information about policies that are in progress and about discussions that are happening at parliamentary or at legislative level every single day. And they will be uploading this information onto the Policy for Africa website and Facebook page on the internet, and on our own intranet page, which will be accessible for subscribers. And in this way we will be able to finance and fund the time of these young students to collect this information. And then of course we will also be funding a policy research section in every country, and also a central one, probably in Pretoria, just because I'm based here at this point in time. And also Pretoria has a very interesting status worldwide. I don't know if you are aware, but this is something that actually has strongly informed my Young Africa strategy, is the fact that if you look at all the capital cities in the world, the one capital city that has the most embassies of representing most countries in the world is Washington, D.C. in America. And this makes perfect sense, because America still is, at this point in time, the most important global power. Everybody and everything orientates itself according to America. Beijing in China is the capital city with the next most embassies, but I'm not as yet planning to work in China. London is another capital that has a large number of embassies. And I'm certainly planning to spend some time there, mainly building my business. The next capital city that has a large number of embassies is Berlin in Germany. Which is why it is my intention to spend some time in Berlin, if God allows me, and to build networks and relationships with African embassy leaders in Germany. And just because they're easily accessible. And similarly, in Pretoria, in fact, my house is in the middle of embassy land, which means I have a number of embassies as my neighbors and a number of people living in this area who work at the embassies as my neighbors. And so it's very easy to access people. And ultimately, as I said right in the beginning, life is about relationships, and it's about building relationships with people, and people influence other people. I really believe that strategically, it's very important for young Africa to have a base in Pretoria, a base in Washington, D.C., and a base in Berlin. And then, of course, to have bases in other parts of the world. But this is the starting point. It becomes very interesting to understand how we can then enable young people in Africa to collect information about their legislatures, no matter in which country they are, and to make this information available so that any citizen in their country can be aware of the policies and the policy discussions that happen at the parliaments. And anybody who wants to help make a contribution to improve that policy or to change a law, because laws are not cast in stone. Laws are legal at a particular point in time, and then they change. And then what they were making legal becomes illegal. It's very interesting. I mean, these are very important aspects to understand, is that a law is not cast in stone. A law can be changed. This is around policies and laws that have been instituted in order to shape the way in which a particular government thinks, and which a particular government wants to serve its people and wants to reshape and transform society. This is not about criminal law. Criminal law is really around one person doing something that's illegal and that's harming another human being, or that's harming a society. And those are in a different category. Sometimes the line gets blurred and things that shouldn't be criminal are made criminal. So, for instance, the whole thing around prostitution, I don't believe there's a point in making it criminal. I believe there's an absolute clear warning sign that something needs to be done on a social level. In the same way, theft is always criminal. For me, it's very simple to just look at the 10 Commandments and know, okay, those should be, stealing and murdering, those are the two things that are literally crimes that should be punished by law. The rest of the 10 Commandments are about relationships. It means there's something wrong in the relationship, and our focus needs to be on restoring those relationships and restoring the understanding and the respect between people, so that they can understand that their behavior, what they're doing, is damaging other people. That's another aspect that I believe is actually also sometimes confused with what the law should be all about. But when you start thinking about policy, it becomes so interesting. And my personal interest in policy in the first instance is, and I'm as surprised as you may be, is tax laws. And the reason for that is just because I see such an incredibly inefficient tax system in South Africa. And I just believe that God has given us such beautiful new technology that can facilitate the whole tax process in an amazing way that can really benefit society enormously. I'm personally planning to focus my attention in 5 years' time for a period of 5 years on nothing but on tax reform across Africa. And I'm really looking forward to having a lot of you by then being aware of what's going on in your country and being willing to think with me about how can we make this better, because we need to make it better. Because ultimately, we cannot have a situation where people pay so much tax, but the services provided by government are so inefficient. It makes no sense whatsoever. I really believe that we need to have a lot more resources available at community level, where communities can develop themselves, and have a lot less happening at the national level where it gets siphoned off into individuals' pockets. That is one of the biggest challenges that we have here. And then, of course, there's the whole matter of financing Africa. You know who's financing Africa? There's a particular movie that's quite interesting to watch that emphasizes this point. It's called The International. Watch that movie and try and understand what's going on and what's said in that movie. But there's one sentence in that movie that is really important, and that sentence is, "He who owns the debt owns the country." He who owns the debt owns the country. So that single line is probably a focus point for policy across Africa. We need to make sure that we, Africans, own our own debt. We must stop borrowing money from people outside of Africa. We must use our resources to build and grow our country. We must own our own debt. This is part of the same conversation that has to do with where is our government state pension money invested in? Where is it being invested in? If you're interested, find out in your country, where is your government investing its pension money? Where is it investing its pension money, and why is it investing it there? These are also critical questions that we living in Africa need to ask and answer and understand who decides on those policies of how to invest. The pension fund, the savings of our country, of our continent. Where are the savings of our continent invested in? Are they invested in instruments that can help grow our economies, or are they invested in instruments that actually don't help our economies? These are very important questions to ask. Anyway, this episode about Policy for Africa may have been a little bit all over the show because there are so many topics, but I just want you to know that we mustn't keep our eye off the ball when it comes to policy and policies for Africa. Thank you for watching this episode. See you in the next episode where I'm going to unpack the very last of the key instruments that I believe Africa needs so that our youth, our 200 million unemployed youth, can help to transform this continent from a place of unnecessary desperation to a space of global inspiration. Thank you for your time.